Shalom, everyone. It's February 22nd. We are talking about Parsha Tetzaveh this morning, this class. We're really not going to go very far into this class, into the Parsha. This is the concept is beauty, and because we are dealing with the different kinds of things that were fashioned for the Mishkan, and that was certainly in last week's Parsha, the appurtenances of the Mishkan, the ark, the table of the showbread, the menorah, other kinds of things, and the boundaries of the Mishkan in general. Today we're dealing more with the clothing of the priests. I'm not going to go deeply into the significance of each of the priestly vestments. That is, obviously another topic. But I'm going to do something very interesting based on the text here, and show how a text, a phrase, kind of meanders its way through Judaism and transforms itself to become something quite fascinating. Okay, and we are going to begin with the text now. And where is our text? Our text is, just a second. I'm sorry. I'll get this up. Here we go. Okay, one moment, please. Thank you. And here we go. Glory and splendor. Boom. So LEKAVOD U-LETIFARET is our text, and it goes like this. I'm exploring the journey of a concept in Jewish history and the problem of beauty. If we get to the problem of beauty, we'll be lucky. The second verse of the Torah reading reads as follows. She'll bring forward your brother Aaron with his sons from among the Israelites to serve me as priests. Aaron, Nadav, and Avihu, Elazar and Itamar, sons of Aaron. Okay, pretty straightforward. Vasita bigdei kodesh lavron achicha. You shall make bigdei kodesh, clothing that is, for the holy. Bigdei kodesh, clothing that belongs in the holy spot, or sacral vestments, they translate it. It's, clothing that is kodesh, bigdei kodesh. Laron achicha, Aaron is the high priest. And what is the purpose of the clothing? LEKAVOD U-LETIFARET, for glory and splendor, glory and beauty, or dignity and adornment. LEKAVOD U-LETIFARET. Okay, those are the two words. I'm just going to read a few more verses just to give you the context here. Next, you shall instruct all who are skillful, whom I have endowed with the gift of skill, to make Aaron's vestments, for consecrating him to serve me as priest. These are the vestments. They are to make a breastpiece, an ephod, a robe, a fringed tunic, a headdress, and a sash. They shall make those sacral vestments for your brother Aaron and his sons for priestly service to me. They therefore shall receive the gold, the blue, purple, and crimson yarns, and fine linen. They shall make the ephod of gold, of blue, purple, and crimson yarns, and a fine twisted linen worked into designs. It shall have 2 shoulder pieces attached. They shall be attached at its 2 ends, and the decorated band that is upon it shall be made like it, of 1 piece with it, of gold, of blue, purple, and crimson yarns, and a fine twisted linen. Then take the 2 lazuli stones and engrave on them the names of the sons of Israel, 6 of their names on 1 stone, and the names of the remaining 6 on the other stone, in the order of their birth. And it goes on and on and on like this, describing the various appurtenances and pieces of clothing of the high priest. And for your viewing pleasure, since this is a visual medium, we have something like this. This is in my latest editions of the Torah. It's found very popular to produce these kinds of figures. And you see, so I'm going to zoom up here, the headdress. There's a cord of blue, to pitil techelet. right? And as you are familiar, the tzitzit are kanaf petil techeled. You shall place on the corner of your garment petil techeled, a cord of blue. And this is a cord of blue. And here is a cord of blue on the side of the Urim Tumim. Two cords of blue on the side. So these cords of blue are to remind they are a reminder of the special nature, the royalty of the high priest. And notice that the headdress, so you can't really see it here, but it says Kodesh Ladonai. It wouldn't have been written in this kind of script. It would have been written in the ancient Hebrew script, and it's a band of gold. Here's the high priest's breastplate, the Urim and Tumim with the very sacred stones. And you can't, if you can make out the embroidery, the stitching of the red, blue, the crimson, blue, and gold in these garments here, and the blue background of this garment. This is the woven garment of the priest, and this is the back he's wearing in the white sleeves. That's what it looks like, what may have looked like, or something like that. So it was very good design. This is Bigdei Aharon HaKohen. Tomer Gelem Zahav, what it's made out of, Zahav Taor, Chutei Pishtan Levanim. These are gold, pure gold, linen, white linen threads, etc., white woolen threads, in purple, in crimson, and with the precious stones. Okay, and there it says Tiur al Piseda Alevisha. This is the order that he wore it. Techila lavash Aaron HaKohen nichlasa. First he put on his pants. Lachar mikan lavash kutonot. He put on his tunics, hamechased kol gufo, that covered all his body, etc. And hakutonot chagar ba'avnet, he put a belt or avnet around him. Al ha'avnet lavash me'il, he wore a coat over this. The ala me'il lavash ephod, he put the ephod, the breastplate, on the coat, and that's, and more things like that. Choshen mishpat al ephod, the various sacral elements of the breastplate. Al Rosho sam et hamitznefet, on his head he put the diadem, the alea natan et tzitz hazahav, and on that he put the golden band, okay, the golden thing. And this is the Choshen, and it has the Urim and Tumim, and that's that. So these are the pictures of it. Now I'm interested not in the pictures, but I'm interested in the text. The text has, as you saw, the words LEKAVOD U-LETIFARET. That is what we want to do. We're calling that glory and splendor, or glory and beauty, dignity and adornment. And that is the stated reason for making the holy vestments, is for glory and beauty. LEKAVOD U-LETIFARET. And so, as usual, we're going to go down the little journey here and show that this is a word pair. LEKAVOD U-LETIFARET is a word pair. And word pairs, as you've heard me say before, are the building block of parallelism. Parallelism is the basic feature of biblical poetry. In parallelism, the second word or phrase expands, augments, modifies, amplifies the first. The effect of parallelism is to engage the reader in a dynamic tension with the idea, okay? So when, my English examples are to have and to hold, right? You recognize that from the secular wedding ceremony. And it's conscious when you state that. It's not conscious. When you state, you take so and so, to have and to hold. To have is not enough, but to hold complements to have, okay? In the national anthem, it's the land of the free and the home of the brave. Those are two parallel elements, the elements being land and home, free and brave. Home modifies land and brave modifies free. And it's as if home complements land and brave complements free. And that is an example of parallelism. Find me a find, catch me a catch, right? So implicit in that line from Matchmaker, Matchmaker is the idea that the selection of a mate involves a bit of a luck and a bit of effort, okay? Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day. Two parallel lines, morning and day. Morning expands to day. I've got a wonderful feeling. Everything going my way. Everything's going my way. Expands on the wonderful feeling. Or Frank Sinatra, I've got you under my skin. I've got you deep in the heart of me. When he said, I mean, this is one of the great songs of the American Songbook. When he sings, I've got you under my skin, we know exactly what he means. It means, the person that he's singing about or to is right there, right with him, okay? And the deep in the heart of me is exactly where that is. It's both of them are metaphors that are parallel to you. This is the Bridge Over 20, Troubled Water. When you're weary, feeling small, when tears are, I can't even sing. I'll dry them out. It's Bridge Over 20, Troubled Water. Okay, Hebrew examples of word pairs. My favorite psalm that has word pairs is Psalm 27. Look how many there are in Psalm 27. It's Ladonai Orivi Ishi, Sarai ve'oivai, Kashlu ve'nafalu, my light and my salvation. When evil men assail me, my foes and my enemies, kashlu v'nafalu, they stumble and fall. What do I want to do? One thing I ask of the Lord, this do I seek, to live in the house of the Lord all the days of it, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord, to frequent his temple. Lachzot ulavaker, ashira v'zamra. I sang melodies. Chaneni v'ameni. Be kind to me, answer me. Al ticheni, al tazveni. Do not abandon me. Do not turn away from me. Avi v'imi, my father, my mother. Horeni necheni, darkecha mishor. Darkecha orach. Horeni means teach me. Necheni means guide me. Darkecha is my way. Orach is a path. Chazak v'yametz, be strong and of courage. In all of these cases, and dozens more in the Hebrew language, the word pair exists so that one is incomplete without the other. The second complements the first complements the second. So in our case of kavod and tifaret, it's kavod sounds like honor, it's glory, and tiferet is beauty. And so the two should go together in the sense that what we are doing for the priest, the high priest, is creating, in a sense, a way of experiencing the aesthetic within the realm of the holy. And this is important because, as we'll see, later Judaism, certainly from the destruction of the temple onwards, has a bit of, and rabbinic Judaism has a bit of a difficult time with beauty. At least that's what we say we do. The truth is somewhat more complicated. Jews, as you know, have produced remarkably rich and gorgeous ritual art, and Jews have also created visual art. We just have not celebrated the creation of our visual art over the millennia. But we have, for lots of reasons, we have gravitated to both music and text and literature as our artistic expressions, okay? Just to give you more of an example of these two words, kavod and tiferet, they only appear in Exodus here. They don't appear together, joined together anywhere else. But they appear in proximity in a number of places. Isaiah, for example, in that day, the radiance of the Lord will lend beauty and glory, and splendor of the land will give dignity and majesty. Here they're translating kavod as glory. Will give dignity and majesty to the survivors of Israel. Nations shall see it's not victory, it's really justice, your righteousness. Should change that. And this will be important, by the way, and we'll see later on. Is righteousness, justice connected to beauty? The argument is yes. How so? We will see. So, all your kings see your glory. Your name. You shall be a glorious crown, a beautiful crown. Strength and beauty, splendor. Right? Kavod. You know that. Hug her to you and she will exalt you. This is wisdom. She will bring you honor if you embrace her. She will adorn your head with a graceful wreath, crown you with a glorious diadem. So here, clearly the author of this proverb has a picture in mind, and the picture may be wisdom, but it's also taken from an image of the Kohen Gadol, which we saw before, that something beautiful is wearing a crown, a glorious crown. In Esther, we're going to read this week, Baharoto et Osher Kavod Malchuto. For no fewer than 180 days, he displayed the vast riches of his kingdom. Osher Kavod Malchuto, the Et Yikar, and the Tiferet Gedulata, the glory of his greatness, Yamim Rabim Shmonim Umat Yom. So it's clear then that there is a relationship between the beauty and glory and splendor and something royalty. So that the high priest with kavod v'tiferet is a kind of royal figure. And this is a comment that basically expresses that. In the ancient Near East, kings wore impressive garments and were often said to possess a divine aura, even to be gods themselves. Was the great priest similarly godlike? By clothing Aaron in the same fabric that tents over the divine presence, by dressing him in a golden ephod with possible idolatrous overtones, the priestly writer, in other words, our text here, created an implicit equation between priest and God. The vestments give him glory and splendor. In other words, it's the clothing that separates the priest, the high priest, from the normal priesthood. That is clear because we see later on in the Parsha that the other priests are wearing plainer clothes, although they're beautiful, but his are the most beautiful. And his are interwoven with colors identified with royalty, namely the crimson and the blue and the purple, the techelet. And so we are familiar with the techelet because the techelet comes from we wear the techelet and the tzitzit. So now I could ask you all to having seen the pictures and heard of these interpretations, what is the significance of wearing a blue thread on the corners of your clothing? What would be the significance of tzitzit? So in the book, in the Sidur, it says, "Uritem oto zchartem et kol mitzvot Adonai v'sitem otam, v'lo tatu ruach acharei levavchem acharei nechem asher temzonim achareichem." Right? You are to watch them, to see them, and to remember the mitzvot. But you're also seeing them, and you're being reminded that you are mamlechet kohanim b'goy kadosh. So the special accoutrements of your sacred position in life is symbolized by the blue thread. Okay, I'm going to give you one more comment and we'll stop. Ramban Nachmanides makes this clear. LEKAVOD U-LETIFARET, sheyeh nichbad u'mefuar b'malbushim nichbadim u'mefuarim. So that he would be honored and glorious with honorable and glorious clothing. Malbushim, nichbadim, mufarim. The clothing itself, beautiful. All right, and it tells you, of course, the aesthetics sensibility. That clothing, beautiful clothing, gives you a sense of presence. We have a verse in Isaiah that says that a groom who ministers in glory. These clothes were the clothes of royalty. Their likeness was worn by kings during the time of the Torah. So our connection here is that clothing is royalty. The special clothing is royal. The priesthood is a royal-like figure and is wearing this clothing for LEKAVOD U-LETIFARET. I'll stop here. And if you have any questions or comments, go ahead, Ilana.
I would like to make a comment.
Yes.
Every year on
hold on. I know what you're going to say.
Okay.
Go. All right.
Okay.
Next. Anybody else want to talk about?
The other thing.
Yes.
The other thing is Achashverosh.
Yes.
I read it in the Midrash that he was wearing Bigdei Kohanim when he showed off his country and his belongings, and he was dressed with, or maybe it was similar to Bigdei Kohanim, so fancy.
Yes. So it's so interesting that the Midrash picks up on this idea.
And it's a connection with the Parsha and Purim the same way.
Absolutely. So it is telling us that the part of the appurtenances of the palace of Achashverosh were plundered items from the temple. The kelim mekelim shonim. We sing that, we chant that in an Echa trop. And the reason for doing that, the kelim mekelim shonim, is because of the standing belief that the items in Achashverosh's palace were brought over by the, were captured from the temple. Very good. Yes. Any other questions? Ruth, unmute yourself.
So this is a really weird thing to be hung up on, but one of the descriptions of the clothing of the Kohen Gadol you mentioned were specifically Michnasayim.
Yes.
So a couple weeks ago, we were reading, I don't remember which Parsha, the Mizbeach was up steps, and the Kohen was not allowed to walk up the steps because he presumably was not wearing any underwear, and that would have embarrassed the steps. So he had to go up a ramp. So all Kohanim are special. I understand that the Kohen Gadol is more special, but the Kohanim don't even rate underwear. I've always found this disturbing.
I'm not sure exactly how to interpret it. But what I would say is that there is some commentary on the idea that the clothing is to neutralize the sexuality of the priesthood. That there is in other ancient Near Eastern religions, the priesthood, together with priestesses, by the way, engaged in a kind of holy or a ritualized sexual, a set of ritualized sexuality. It's in that context that the biblical Israel removes the sexuality from the Kohen, and also removes the element of a female priesthood from serving. The absence of females in the service of the priesthood just takes it off the table, as it were. It removes any notion of sexuality in the performance of ritual. I'm not an expert in this field, and I don't really want to go into depth here, but there's something to be said for that. That the Bible itself wants to veer away from sexualizing religious life, and that the boundaries are actually not so far apart there. Okay. Any other questions, comments? All right, we'll continue here just a second. Okay. Back to sharing. Oops, daisy. Always like that. Here we go. So the idea that the Kohen Gadol was such a powerful sight is picked up in some of the in some other literature. Ben Sira is a what we call apocryphal. It emerges around the same time as the latest of the biblical writings, but Ben Sira wasn't included in the Bible. It was one of those books that just didn't make it. We have fragments of it. Fragments of it were found. And here is a picture of the appearance of the high priest. Great one of his brethren and glory of his people was Simon, son of Yochanan, the priest, in whose generation the house was repaired, and whose days the temple was fortified, in whose generation a cistern was digged, the pit like the sea in its abundance, in whose days a well was built. Go. How glorious was he when he looked forth from the tent, and when he went out from the house of the veil, as the morning star from amid thick clouds, and as the full moon in the days of solemn feast, and as the sun dawning upon the temple of the king, and as rainbow seen in the cloud, as budding branch in the days of solemn feast, and as the lotus by the watercourses, as flower of Lebanon, etc., as a green olive full of berries, when he put on robes of honor and clothed themselves with robes of beauty, when he ascended the altar of majesty and made glorious the precinct of the sanctuary. Ba'atoto bigdei chavod v'hitlabsho bigdei tifaret. That's where it's made. And so he is this amazing sight until he finished serving the altar, then sounded the sons of with trumpets of finery. It's all the people of the land chanted in prayer before the merciful until he finished serving the altar. Then he came down, lifted his hands over the congregation of Israel, and the blessing of the Lord was on his lips, and in the name of the Lord he gloried. So what we have here is this remarkable scene. It's you know, our contemporary Jewish life does not contain pageantry, and there are reasons for this. You know, I was thinking in preparing for this class, you know, I was thinking about the way that we replicate beauty within religious life, and how we have gone to, I think, a certain direction. At least, you know, we in our synagogue, me in particular, in terms of being spare in our both pictorial representations and also artistic adornments. I'll give you one example, which is, you know, I'm the rabbi, so I don't wear a gown. I don't wear a fancy kippah. I wear a fairly clean suit. These days, I don't wear fancy shoes because there's only 30 of us in shul, and I'll wear my comfortable shoes. I'm standing all the time. But obviously, you know, on more festive occasions, I'll wear, you know, a nice suit. I have too many suits. And that's basically the way it is with most of us. Some of us have fancier kippot, fancier talesim, and you know, you could do a little survey of clergy and see that the range of, you know, clothing and the range of kind of robing and talitot and kippot, you know, there's a range. You know, it's interesting that within the Hasidic world and within the ultra-Orthodox world, the nuances are there. The rabbis do wear, garb that differentiates them. Some, wear their hats, their fedoras. Some, are very large talesim. There is a certain kind of, code in the in their apparel. The message that I think I'm very conscious of, or not really conscious of, is, I'm not that much different from most people. Okay, I'm the rabbi. I'm still amazed at the fact that I get to do this. I really, every week, I'm still amazed that I do this, and that it's not that I don't take the power seriously. It's that I find the artifice of it is something that doesn't pull me. When I was growing up, and I'm sure many of you will recall, rabbis wearing robes and rabbis wearing, high, hats, etc. This was what it was familiar. But somewhere in the 70s, we hung all of that up. You still may find a couple of people wearing robes. I know that there are a couple of synagogues that still do this. The Spanish and Portuguese, they do this. The Shar Shemaim in Montreal still has, robed clergy and other places. But more you find, the clergy wearing normal clothing, or a little bit fancy schmancy kippot, thing like that. It never did it for me. I once thought about it, but nah. I'll take a vote. All in favor? Okay. We'll go back. So that's the Kohen. And then this is, it gets picked up on the Seder Avoda in this beautiful poem, Mar'eh Kohen. As a rainbow in the clouds was the appearance of the high priest, as the garment of majestic splendor, which the Creator attired his creatures, was the appearance of the high priest. Kechod asher hilbish tzur litzurim Mar'eh Kohen, etc., etc. I mean, it goes on, through dozens of verses here. What does he look like? It's So it's just extraordinary. And to the poet here, I would say there must have been some kind of inspiration that led to this. There's a memory of this, that it was splendid. In fact, the memory of the beautiful temple lives on in Judaism to this day. We spend a day mourning the destruction of the temple, precisely because, in addition to other things, it also was a place of great beauty. All right. But how does this concept travel in Judaism? It goes as follows. You may be familiar with this bracha, which is at the end of the Haftarah blessings. Ala Torah v'ala avodah v'ala v'yom ha'shabbat hazeh shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu likdusha v'limucha LEKAVOD U-LETIFARET, for glory and for splendor. What are we thanking God for? For the Torah, for the service of the prophets, for the Shabbat day you have given us, Lord our God, for sanctification and rest, for glory and splendor. What does glory and splendor mean there? It doesn't mean physical glory. It doesn't mean physical splendor. It means the beauty and the splendor of Shabbat. And I find this to be the genius of Judaism, which is it shows you that it is wrestling with the concept of physical beauty and aesthetic beauty, and takes all of that aesthetics and channels it into the quality of the spiritual experience of Shabbat. Now, you can have a spiritual experience of it, and of course, we adorn our tables. I'm sitting at my table. I have a challah board. I have a challah cover. I have beautiful, thing to drink wine out of, and other kinds of things. And of course, we have Hidur Mitzvah for Sukkot and for Passover and all of those things. And they enhance our experience of the holidays. But the experience is not linked to the physical objects. experience is linked to the day. And this exists to this day. This is how we recite the Haftarah blessings. But now, and of course in Jewish art, I just want to, in Torah mantles, we take on the characteristics of clothing. The priests have gone into all sorts of directions. So let's give you a couple of examples of this. Here we go. Can you all see this? These beautiful Torah mantles. This is fantastic. Here's another Torah parochets. So let's not make a claim that Judaism doesn't have love of the plastic arts. We do love art, and we do channel this love into adornment of the sacred space. This is Jeanette Kuvan-Oren. Look at all these different Torah mantles. I mean, my God, you know. And of course, the sky is the limit. She designed our Torah cover, our table covers. These originally the Torah mantles had a relationship to the clothing of the high priest. But here, there's nothing near this. Look at this, okay? These are nothing near the high priest. What she's done here is, I think, obviously a step in terms of taking the Torah mantle as a canvas in which she could now create a new narrative. And here, the narrative of the seasons, the narrative of the different Torah stories, different kinds of things, the tree of life spread over different things. It's all very beautiful. And depending on your taste, this is my friend Sharon Binder. This is her art. And we have her art in our shul, the sukkah, and I commissioned a special piece of art from her on a verse that was very special to our lives. And now, do I have any more here? Jenna Kuvan-Oren, this one, and this one, LEKAVOD Art Gallery, beautiful, and one more. Oh, this is Parochet. myparochet.com. Wow, look at this. Look at all the different kinds of things you could do. LEKAVOD U-LETIFARET, okay? It's all a matter of style. I mean, yeah, okay, who knows? Different verses, different kinds of things. And what's amazing is on this website, you have modern and you have classic Torah mantles. Here, Torah mantles, okay? You have modern and you have different kinds of traditional, majestic. Look at that, you can feel the difference in them. Majestic with the traditional colors. And the holiday Torah mantles. And there's that. I have even seen fur and leather mantles. Yeah, I know. Good. I see expressions. Okay. So there. All right. Let's go back to our text here. Well, Ilana, say what you're going to say.
Okay, so here it is. Every year on Yom HaAtzmaut, on the Israeli Independence Day, they choose 12 special people to light a menorah, and they prepare a speech, but they all end up with the same sentence.
LEKAVOD
U-LETIFARET מדינת ישראל.
Okay, we're going to watch some of this. I'm going to try and translate this. I have to say, I watch this, you move. It's so precious. It's so beautiful. I'll pick it up at minute 40. This is from last year. So it was the Corona.
שרת התרבות והספורט, חברת הכנסת מירי רגב, לקיים את הטקס בסימן חיבורים בחברה הישראלית.
So I just have to stop here. Here, if anybody said that Israel is a racist state, I mean, this is Esther Rada. She's an actress. Guy Schwartz, also an actor. I mean, beautiful, gorgeous, whatever, talented. They're the MCs of the ceremony. We chose the best, what unifies us, and what keeps us together. So here, so they call the people carrying the torches. They're coming up with a thing, okay? And now this is the mosaic of the Israeli society. Idan Reichel, important singer, important. Okay, so 17 years ago he burst onto the scene. I'm just going to go for, okay? Listen to what he says here. It's so moving. His performances are so moving, and they bring all Israelis, different Israelis backgrounds all together. Anybody who listens to his music hears himself. Listen to it. I, Idan Reichel, son of Rochela and Yoav Reichel, in Kfar Saba, grandson of Miriam and Pinchas Yarkoni. Some of they were part of the fighters for Jerusalem, the clearers of the pathways to Jerusalem in the War of Independence. Grandson of Rachel and Avram Reichel. I light this torch in honor, lichvod. Notice, lichvod, the giants of Hebrew music of the past, and the creators, the beautiful creators of our own time. The singers, the players, the directors, the producers, people who sing, studio people, before the scenes, out behind the scenes. We are all in a chain of creativity, Israeli. In honor of the security forces, people in the background, fallen soldiers, people who have been wounded both in their body and their soul. For the community, for the audience, and for all the old people. And they brought this Israeli music, it's one beautiful tribe, one brothers and sisters. So each one of these is extraordinary in its own right. We have a bunch of these. Here's one. She's doing it. She's American. Go ahead.
For the world that in these times are keeping their families together and strong. Likvod, the profound mifgash between Israeli mothers and their sisters in the diaspora. Achdut velo achidut. Likvod, Jewish communities across the globe who form the fabric of Jewish life in the diaspora. Likvod, our future, our children, including our son Zev and all the other Chaylim Bodedim. In the merit soldiers of the righteous women, we were redeemed from Mitzrayim. Be'ezrat Hashem, we will emerge from this time to rebuild even stronger. Chazak Nashim, Chazak. U-LETIFARET Medinat Yisrael.
חזקה מאוד, מאוד אהבתי גם את החיבור בין עדי על
So the announcers are really, really, wow, she's so strong, she's so amazing, that's so amazing. What I'm saying is that the phrase itself is part of the language. It's not only part of the language, it shapes a whole picture of understanding honor and beauty. Letiferet Medinat Israel. such a moving scene. So I want to just do one more with you from the 62nd anniversary, and see again. I mean, I wish we had the time to go through the whole thing, because it's the people that they choose are just truly remarkable and representative of every single religion, ethnic group, and area of Israeli society. It's just remarkable. And here you see it in.
ובשלבי המיון לקראת שירות בצבא.
אני זכיתי בפרסי חינוך.
Okay, 1 second. Here's Yitzhak Abraham at 222. Go ahead.
אני יצחק אברהם.
I'm Yitzhak Abraham.
בחיל הרפואה של צבא
I'm in
ההגנה
the
לישראל.
medical corps.
יליד אדיס אבבה שבאתיופיה.
I was born in Addis Ababa. And I live in Beersheba. I'm the son of Rachamim and Kitsi. I came to Israel 18 years ago. I learned medicine at Ben Gurion University. I'm a specialist in surgery. I'm part of a paratrooper brigade and Sayeret Golan. I was wounded in the Second Lebanon War. I was in the medical command in the south and the captain. I went in the mission to Haiti after the earthquake. I'm honored to light this torch for Israel's 62nd anniversary in honor of all the people who guard our land, north and south, east and west, on land and air and the sea, in uniform and not uniform, in air Israel and outside. In honor of our prayers and our worries for all of our captured, and to comfort the families of the fallen. To serve in humanitarian missions all over the world in the hope that we'll have Medinat Israel. So the crowd was going wild for this guy, Yitzhak Abraham. Okay, so beauty related to justice? The answer is, well, we'll see. Look, Kohanecha yilbeshu tzedek v'chasidecha yironenu. I could go through the whole psalm, but there is a connection here that when the priest comports himself in beauty, he's also comporting justice. And this led me to this idea that beauty and justice are related. This is a long pitch here, but I'm going to pick it up here. This is Elaine Scarry. She's a philosopher at Harvard University who talks about the connection between beauty and justice.
An enduring moment after coming into the presence of what is beautiful. Accounts given over many centuries report the link between the exposure to the beautiful and the desire to create. Diotima, you'll probably remember, told Socrates, who told Plato, who tells us that the beauty of the face of the person you love gives rise to the desire to bring children into the world. But Diotima says that beautiful persons and things not only prompt the creation of children, but the creation of poems, plays, legal treatises, and works of philosophy. 20th century philosophers agree with Diotima and Socrates and Plato. What is it, Wittgenstein asks, that happens to us when we stand in the presence of a beautiful cathedral, or a beautiful boy, or a beautiful flower? He answers, when the eye sees something beautiful, the hand wants to draw it. Instead of the word creation, it is, in my judgment, useful to sometimes use the prosaic word replication, because that second word reminds us how very widespread this impulse is. There may be very great outcomes, a new child, a new piece of architecture, a breakthrough in mathematical thinking, something we would all recognize as great acts of creation. But the same impulse is evident if one sees something beautiful and wants to take a photograph of it, or tell a friend about it, or simply stand and perpetuate the moment of seeing for 20 seconds more by keeping it within your perceptual horizon. These everyday outcomes are also acts of creation. They are counterfactual. They bring into being something that was not the case before. How is this incitement to creation yoked to justice? It is in two ways. First, while beauty may be either natural or artifactual, that is, beauty may exist in a field of wildflowers, but it may also exist in an act of artistry, as when Monet paints that field of flowers. But justice, in contrast, is always artifactual, always artificial. It always requires acts of human intervention and creation. Anything, therefore, which puts us in touch with our own powers of creation is itself a contribution to the ongoing aspiration for justice. The philosopher David Hume is among those who have emphasized this point. He said that natural virtues need to have some benign outcome in order to be good, whereas the artificial virtues need have no immediately visible outcome, since the mere exercise of our capacity for the artifactual is itself a good outcome. The second way in which beauty, by at once awakening us to our capacity for the artifactual, contributes to justice is simply that it is tied to the desire to bring more and more into the world so that there is eventually enough. That impulse towards plenitude has many names.
Okay, so that it gets complicated, and it's hard, but it's just saying you see beauty, and beauty motivates you to bring more beauty into the world. Beauty motivates you to shape a world with symmetry and with justice. And she earlier on in the talk talks about that the word fair is connected to beauty and to justice. Okay. That's connected to beauty and justice. But the problem is that beauty doesn't always lead to justice. There can be beauty is a solace for good and for evil. I just finished reading this, an aesthetic beauty plays a role in the worship of God, but it also is many of the cruelest humans in history love beautiful music. There's also a problem with beauty. Let me put this up for you. This is, I just finished reading a book called East West Street by Philippe Sands. We've talked about him in previous show. And in his interview, he talks about the fact that beautiful things inspired the cruelest people and gave comfort to the cruelest people. And in his book, he talks about Hirsch Lauterbach, who is the architect of the term crimes against humanity, and Hans Frank, who was the governor of the Warsaw Ghetto and the district around it. Both loved the same piece of music. And this ought to make us all kind of, here we go.
Which is the story of this book, but with the music beloved by Lauterbach, Lemkin, and Frank. We're in an auditorium with a live audience, and it's a completely different thing. So one of the things that I discovered in writing this book was that one of my three protagonists, Hirsch Lauterbach, professor of law at Cambridge, prosecutor at the Nuremberg trial, the man who gave us the concept of crimes against humanity in international law, got solace at his most difficult moments listening to a piece of music by Johann Sebastian Bach, the Matthew Passion. And at the very same time that that was going on, the summer of '46, the man he was prosecuting, Hans Frank, took solace in exactly the same piece of music. He was a defendant, he imagined he was listening to the Matthew Passion, he couldn't listen to it, he was in a prison cell. And that caused me to think, how can it be that two people on the other side of the same courtroom, one is a prosecutor, one is a defendant, find solace and strength in the same musical space? And that is the kind of exploration that you can engage in a public space, in a theatre at King's Place, as we did last week, which is very significant and interesting, and which leads to extraordinary moments. There was a little encore of an incredible piano, 2 minutes of piano improvised on the Matthew Passion. It's an extraordinarily powerful moment. What happened was we did our performance for 90 minutes, and there was then a Q&A, which was conducted by John
So now he talks about what happened in the performance. I'm going to stop it there. But because the issue that he's talking about here is, I think this is a particularly Jewish problem. As much as we understand and want to enjoy beauty, we have a skeptical opinion of beauty for its own sake. And the reason for this is because we understand probably more than most that cruel people can love beautiful things. It's not an accident that the Nazis hoarded art, stolen art. And it's not an accident that the art and the music that on the one hand should have motivated them to justice, motivated them to a sense of justice that meant a world without Jews. So so a Jew listens to Elaine Scarry and a Jew listens to the philosophy and says, wait a minute, I understand the aesthetic impulse. I understand the need to glorify God with beautiful things. I understand the need for beautiful Torah covers and beautiful clothing on the high priest. And I understand the need and the joy that you get from beauty. But I also understand its limitations. And I channel that tension in the creation of beauty and time through Shabbat. And I would add, I channel it into the creating of a society, LEKAVOD U-LETIFARET Medinat Yisrael. The LEKAVOD U-LETIFARET Medinat Yisrael formula captures the impulse, which is not an artistic impulse. Those people that are being honored are not art. I mean, there are artists. Dion Reichel is an artist, but when he speaks about art and music, he is speaking about putting the people together, creating a society in which we are working towards something. So yes, you could say that that's channeling the impulse that Elaine Scarry is talking about, but it's aware constantly of the limitations of it. And I find that to be a very, very powerful idea that I'm not even sure, exactly how to resolve. Judaism struggles with it because, we tend to think of ourselves as not necessarily inclined towards the visual arts because we see the limitations of the visual arts, that they themselves can become a source of adoration and worship, because the power of the visual medium is just so much greater than other things, and they can lead you astray. It's not an accident that the dominant medium for the transmission of Judaism is sound and not the visual. Shema and not re'eh. We have see, but it's more important to hear. Hearing establishes truths in a much more intimate and direct way than the visual. The visual leads you and draws you and makes you susceptible to adoration, which will take you away from God. I'm going to do the last. Okay, Ilana, while I'm doing the last thing, go ahead.
In the Ten Commandments, לא תעשה לך פסל.
True.
תמונה.
True. All of that is true, and that is seen as one of the reasons why we are not inclined to this. But again, we struggle with this. There are lots of different kinds of things that explore this tension. Here is one last piece from Dennis Prager's commentary. I like his commentary. Aesthetic beauty plays a role in worship of God. The elaborate details in this chapter once again attest to the importance the Torah attached to the place of great art in religious life. With the destruction of the temple, however, art became much less significant in Jewish life, which came to emphasize the intellect and morality. The aesthetic has often been viewed as irrelevant to Jewish religiosity, except for some stunning synagogues, almost all of them built before the beginning of the 20th century, and as not Jewish, given its importance in the non-Jewish, specifically Christian, Muslim, and secular world. That this estrangement from art need not be inherent to traditional Judaism is demonstrated by a story Jonathan Sacks uncovered in the writings of Rabbi Abram Isaac Kook, the chief rabbi of Pre-State Israel. Rabbi Kook spent several years in London during World War I and wrote the following. When I lived in London, I would visit the National Gallery, and the paintings I loved most were those of Rembrandt. In my opinion, Rembrandt was a saint. When I first saw Rembrandt's paintings, they reminded me of the rabbinic statement about the creation of light. When God created light, it was so strong and luminous that it was possible to see from one end of the world to the other. And God feared that the wicked would make use of it. What did he do? He secreted it for the righteous in the world to come. But from time to time, there emerges when it goes on, there emerges an individual like Rembrandt. Many of the cruelest humans in history love beautiful music and art, is what Prager says here. But the point is that there is light and creativity and art is given to us, but it's so powerful that it can lead you, or it's not that it can lead you, it's not necessarily a guarantee for good and morality. And that tension is a tension that we struggle with. And I think that comes up here in this text. So I'll take some comments now. Go ahead. Yes.
Two comments. I want to answer Ruth. Somewhere in the description of the clothing, the priests do wear breeches.
Yes.
So they have pants on. So, but you're right. Somewhere else it also says you can't walk up steps. You have to walk up a ramp.
Yeah.
Presumably because they weren't wearing, because it says, because they shouldn't, be exposed to the holy steps. Somehow they would offend the steps if they were the steps.
But they did wear.
Or the people looking up.
The second point is, Rabbi, it's the chazanim in the synagogues that wore the robes and the big hats. And they look majestic, especially some of the older chazanim.
Yes, and that tells you something. That tells you that the chazan was the splendor. There was a kind of resplendence. The rabbis wore robes too. I mean, I certainly recalled rabbis wearing robes. I think it stopped around 1975.
I remember when Rabbi Hilsenrath stopped wearing robes, and he kind of made jokes about it. He said he was going to disrobe. He used funny language to make it.
So Rabbi Hilsenrath, a perfect example, who lived in the transition of the more formal to the more egalitarian. Look, the disrobing is an egalitarian impulse. It says I'm not distinct, I'm not differentiated. I mean, clearly that's a message. All right.
But Michael here is Michael's a Yeki. I'm going to guess. I mean, I'll let Michael speak for himself, but I'm guessing that those Yekis are still dressed up funny.
So the chazan in the Yeki shuls always wore special hats, and I think they still do today.
Okay, Bob Like.
Yep. I wanted to make a different comment, and that is that I'm having a little difficulty divorcing the discussion about beauty and dignity and that from the context of the Kohen Gadol in the sacrifice and, if you will, the installation ceremony. And I remember reading some Hasidic perspectives that humility is one other aspect to the wearing of the garments. And specifically, even the narrowing of the blue shirt was something about Lashon Hara and arrogance and things of that sort. So the question of the relationships of these themes with beauty and dignity and all that are sort of resonating. I wonder if you have some thoughts on that.
Well, sure. I mean, I'm going to take an easy shot here and say that what could be more dignified than humility? What could be more dignified and beautiful than humility? Than the comportment, and I'm not talking about meekness, but the gorgeous, humility, the resplendence of, embodied in that represents a certain moral paradigm, that you are to aspire to that kind of beauty as opposed to any physical kind of beauty. But it's clear that the Bible does know of aesthetic beauty. What the tradition does is it neuters aesthetic beauty and amplifies moral beauty, which is humility, clearly. Ilana.
maybe kavod is more physical and tiferet is more spiritual. And that's how it may be combined together.
That exactly, it could be that. I mean, I think there are lots of ways to interpret the pair, the word pair. Kavod seems to have more associations with royalty. That it's in that context that it appears more. And Tiferet reaches towards, you know, that abstract beauty. Kavod, though, I think kavod is heavy, it's gold, it's, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah. I find this, it's a very rich conversation, a very rich topic, you know, in a parsha that focuses so much on details that is very difficult to talk about. You know, when you know, if you just read any verse, you know, I throughout Breshit and early Shemot, you know, I talk about the narrative and the poetics. I mean, I get so excited about that. You know, I mean, obviously, I'm inclined to certain kinds of pieces of the Torah, but I want to say, even in this one verse, even in this one phrase of a verse, is embodied an entire subject that resonates throughout Judaism, throughout Jewish history, until this day, and appears in forms that, I mean, are so deeply inspiring. You know, I watched a lot of those ceremonies, and I wish, you know, they were subtitled in English so you would be able to understand them. I'm happy to watch them with you another time. You know, you see these things. I was so moved to tears by watching, you know, the different people and the different kinds of experience, especially even last year's ceremony, which there was no audience, they were honoring all the medical workers, they were honoring Magen David Adom. They had a Christian woman, young woman from Nazareth, who lit a torch in honor of all the first responders. It was just unbelievable. Okay, and a Druze doctor, and this, and, you know, just incredible, you know, expressions of the beauty and the glory, LEKAVOD U-LETIFARET. And I think that's a very strong and meaningful resonance of a biblical concept, and it's a perfect illustration of how a biblical concept moves through history right up until our own time. And I think that's something to enjoy. Hope we get to see one this year. Lila and Hillary, you have a question?
I had a question.
Go ahead.
To digress, but at the end of the Parsha, they take the ram's blood, yes, and the high priest is to sprinkle the ram's blood on the shoulders of the sons who are to work there. And they're also in beautiful garb, not quite as elegant. And that it sort of ruins it for me. I mean, I understand it, but on the other hand, and you know, it's that kind of thing. And the second thing was the gold, the silver, the copper, the linen, and those three particular colors of thread were what, as I recall, they were supposed to inquire of their neighbors before leaving
Egypt.
So it was already in the works. It was in God's planning, so to speak, to build the Mishkan and use all of this. And it's circular, but I don't understand the sprinkled blood on these beautiful vestments.
Okay. So again, this is a perception of beauty, and this is a perception, the sprinkling of blood. See, I share that sentiment with you, because after all, here you have these beautiful clothes, and you're gonna get them all dirty, right? We you know, interpret it as dirty. They obviously did not. What it probably meant was I explored this in the ceremony of the ritual of, sprinkling on the people. It was to index. It was a way of pointing to them. The blood was, I am making the connection between one and the other. And so the priests, having been elected as the agents, they are being indexed in a special relationship, and that happens through blood. I hope it wasn't like a bucket. I hope maybe it was just a kind of, eyedropper, All right, folks, we got to leave it there. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. It's great to